trying not to forget, but I don't know now. I'm trying not to pretend, but I don't know how my Wednesdays won't be the same. Oh.
Welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, my name's angelbbkira. Make sure you like and subscribe. Go follow me on Instagram and TikTok. So today we're going to be talking about an interesting topic, since I've made videos about Nick is not green and the discourse about Curtis Connor and his friend Dean, which is accountability culture is inherently flawed. And I've read a lot of people's comments on the Nick is not green and Curtis Connor situation or whatever. So this is why I'm making this video, because there's a lot of people talking about how accountability has become inherently flawed, especially in the creator space. Long story short, someone on TikTok decided to try to cancel Curtis Connor because of his best friend's Dean's past. If you don't know what I'm talking about, you can watch my other video talking about it. But the things that Dean has done are obviously very egregious, and they're very horrible, racist, doing blackface, form of racism, has homophobic and misogynistic rhetoric on Twitter. He has since then apologized in 2014, but of course it is brought up again for whatever reason as people get bigger. A lot of fans, I don't know, this girl from TikTok said that she was a fan of Curtis Connor and then tried to paint Curtis as this horrible person for platforming Dean, which I guess a lot of people also agreed with, was that the people that you are around kind of reflect you, but also we're punishing Curtis because of someone else's actions. So I think that's where accountability culture is kind of flawed in that sense, is because when is it too far and when is it ever enough to be forgiven? I don't agree, and do not take this out of context because I know there are people that will do that, but I don't agree with the actions that were done. I don't think that is okay that Dean did that. However, we need to ask ourselves, when are people amended for their past? When are people able to get forgiveness from their past? When are they able to move on? When are they able to show that they're different people when people still bring up the stuff from the past and won't let them move on? And I think that's something for time to tell, to see if Dean's actions are actually changing. And the only real person that actually knows him in real life is Curtis Connor. So someone put it this way in the comments: if you got a speeding ticket 10 years ago, went to court for something else, but then they brought up that speeding ticket from 10 years ago to take you down, is that fair? So I think that was the whole reason why I started thinking about this, because it is true. When is it time to move on and when is it time to forget? Obviously, there's a certain kind of person that has a decision whether or not to forgive Dean because it was racist and he was doing blackface. So that's not me to say when you forgive him, or for me to say to forgive him. So I guess it just depends on that. So looking at y'all's comments, it seems like there's a bit of discourse of how to determine what is right or wrong in this situation, which brings us into the tangent of what is really right and wrong. Everyone's morals are different. I'm sad to say that, but I feel there's certain things that are just inherently immoral, but obviously some people have differing opinions. Everyone's definition of right or wrong is different. What may be completely obvious to someone may not be apparent to others, which is obviously very prevalent, especially in that era of the early 2010s, mid 2010s, where a lot of people were doing very offensive jokes, especially on YouTube, and I was kind of the breeding ground for it. So I don't really want to associate with BreadTube, and I had to first find out what that was because I had a guess of what it was. I was assuming it was just the leftist commentary side of YouTube, which includes the video essayists, live streamers, and commentary. And it doesn't even have to necessarily be on political topics, but it always has a leftist point of view, a leftist kind of, I guess, agenda behind it. So when it comes to TikTok drama or controversy, there will be a bias of leftist viewpoints to whatever the topic may be. For example, if it comes to male podcasters getting into controversy and saying inherently misogynistic things, then a lot of the BreadTubers are going to be inherently feminist, which I don't understand how anyone cannot, but I digress. And another feature of BreadTube is that they do this thing called algorithm hijacking, which basically means they discuss topics that are also being discussed by the right-wing side, the alt-right side of YouTubers. So someone that comes into mind is Steven Crowder and Blair White, because they cover these topics that alt-right commentators do. It also exposes them to people who are also not in their demographic or who hold the same views as them. So it completely just boosts up their video and with the algorithm. And differing viewpoints obviously means there's gonna be more comments. More comments mean engagement. More engagement means means that algorithm likes this and it will push their video. A lot of these breadtubers are like mostly younger millennial or older Gen Zers like myself, and are often the introduction to left-wing politics of the same generation or younger. Like stereotypically speaking, of course, there will be older people, whatever, but stereotypically speaking, it's usually like Gen Z, young Gen Zers, and millennials. I would consider like breadtube like a spectrum because there's a lot of discourse within the breadtube community. It goes from like liberal ideas, which Hassan Piker seems to like differentiate a lot from leftists, especially in his videos, being like, this is leftist, this is liberal ideologies, to complete socialist, communist, or Maoist. There are a lot of differing ranging beliefs, some more extreme than others, obviously, and you have like Hassan Piker with like Ethan Klein, which Ethan Klein has been like criticized that he's not socialist enough, he's not like liberal enough, so there was a lot of like discourse about that and criticism on him, especially with the conflict that has been happening with Israel and Palestinians. So according to Wikipedia, the term breadtube comes from Peter Kropotkin's The Conquest of Bread, which is a book explaining how to achieve anarcho-communism and how an anarcho-communist society would function. I also like to view breadtube as a kind of like meta journalism, if you will, because they are often aided with like debates and discourse with other creators, like I said, Ethan Klein and H3, Hassan Piker. Even though there's no real source of when breadtube started or like a takeoff point, it is like known that it came into popularity in the mid 2010s as YouTubers started to battle against alt-right and the anti-social justice warriors. Think of like Blair White having like those Google like video calls with certain people like ContraPoints and stuff like that. And speaking of ContraPoints is one of like the notable OG channels that contribute to breadtube and was one of the first OG like breadtube creators, and they would often be shown in Blair White's videos, so then you see like the crossover between the two like political beliefs and also just the two creators crossing over in like debates. A lot of the videos are geared towards people who don't hold their views and lets the viewers kind of think about it with their own thought. This is what breadtube is kind of like known for, is that it inhibits more rethinking and a lot of more telling you to think about it for yourself compared to alt-right kind of commentators telling you this is fact, this is how you should think it, or you're blah blah blah, you know what I mean? So that's kind of how breadtubers like format their videos. This is the reason why I started watching breadtubers, because I grew up in a very conservative Christian household and held very conservative beliefs, and fear that if I faltered I wouldn't be loved by my parents or I would go to hell basically. So I would watch the debates, especially with Blair White and the debate she has done and was on the right side of YouTube. And as I started going to university, I was exposed to different views at school, and obviously on YouTube I began to watch Hassan and Vosh. Even though I wasn't completely in the left, I began to question like the side that I grew up with, and it made me be honest with myself and made me realize that the things that I had been ashamed of and had pushed down for literally all of my life was nothing to be ashamed of. And I started growing to myself to the person that I am now, and expressing myself through clothing and makeup and enjoying all culture like completely really made me swallow what you would call the blue pill. Like things that had always been in my intuition and things that had always like ached at me was finally being assured that I was feeling valid, and I began living my life for me and not feeling selfish for doing so, which of course caused a lot of trouble at home, but that's a completely different story. And this is why I feel like a lot of younger people gravitate towards breadtubers, why they hold them on kind of a pedestal in which their authority and who they throw criticism at is like followed intensely by their subscribers, by their followers, because pretty much these breadtubers can do no wrong, and whoever they say that needs to be canceled will and shall be canceled. I feel like within breadtube there are like little niches, like the live streamers, so think of like Hassan, Vosh, and Destiny, and then the video essayists like Cat Black, and then like the commentary YouTubers, which is like the people that have been coming under fire and I feel like have really been dragging down breadtube. So we have Curtis Connor, Jacob Sharp, Jarvis, Jake Doolittle, then his onliner Petha, Nick is not green, Danny Gonzalez. Sometimes I'll throw in like D'Angelo Wallace. Those are like the main bigger kind of commentary YouTubers. Like those are the main ones I can think of right now, but of course there are like smaller channels that don't get as much user notoriety, but they're slowly building as we are starting to get fatigued of like the white commentary YouTuber space. And when I watch commentary YouTubers, they often talk with a lot of like vindication and a sense of authority, and often commentate, which a lot of times leans towards criticisms of other people, mostly other influencers and content creators. Had them go after people like Andrew Tate when he was so big on social media and was saying all these crazy things on podcasts, on his own podcast platform by YouTube. They criticize people who have done wrongdoing, basically anyone they feel like is not in the right or has like very shitty behavior. And it's often brought up through tweets from years ago. People call it acts that are not deemed acceptable because they just aren't acceptable and probably won't ever be. And of course, like things from TikTok, there's a lot of reactionary kind of videos that commentary YouTubers like commentate with TikTok videos. Like there's that water talk thing, Gate scandal, things of that nature that aren't very like that serious, but that's the kind of that a lot of commentary YouTubers have like resorted to, which is more of just like the light-hearted kind of commentary stuff. And when they used to do a little more like thought-provoking commentary, with this like kind of like breeding ground to have like a rise of criticism on certain creators. Like there's even like that J-pop group that Nick is Not Green and I believe Hassan are like literally talking about, and it caused a very negative backlash towards them because of how loyal their fans are, meaning Hassan and Nick is Not Green, or like Jarvis too I think was in it. It's quite easy to get consumed in this cancel culture, which was what at instance a lot of people were trying to cancel this. I think it was a J-pop group because they weren't actually Japanese and they were trying to say they were truly appropriating, and they ended up getting doxxed or getting harassed and all that nasty stuff, and Nick is Not Green kind of just like enable that kind of behavior. And this may be an unpopular opinion, but when does like accountability culture come too far? Because I feel like sometimes it does become too much, in which you're digging up tweets from 10, 15, 20 years ago. So it's like, why does that matter now? Especially if they're not exhibiting that behavior now, especially if they're not doing the same things that they were 10, 15, 20 years ago. Because guess what? They grew up, people get older, people realize things. That might not be the case for everyone, but I feel like as human beings, especially normal people who aren't under the scope of the camera, being an influencer, being a YouTuber, being a celebrity, I feel like they're just more chances of them just trying to get put down by accountability culture and canceled, because people do like hating, people do like canceling people. And even on my Curtis Connor video, people were commenting like, oh, I can't wait for people to leave the Curtis Connor cult, he was never funny, blah. Like there was already this predisposition of hatred, of just not liking Curtis Connor. So as soon as someone finds something about a certain person they already despise and don't like for whatever reason, because like they don't even know Curtis in real life and they already have all this hatred for him, as soon as they find out something that is negative and that can ruin like their career, they're all aboard on it. So it's like, is that accountability, or is that just people just wanting to cancel people for the sake of canceling people? However, there of course are people like James Charles and Jeffree Star who should not be platformed, especially with James Charles having more allegations come out. And obviously his behavior hasn't changed. So there are people like that are actually breaking the law, that are actually performing harmful acts on to people, like children that he has been allegedly texting and trying to talk to and sending nudes to. So that's the kind of thing that I feel like that should be held accountable, and that should be dealt with, the police dealt with in that kind of manner legally. Should not be platformed, and like it's very questionable. Jeffree Star or Shane Dawson, and that is valid to want to deplatform these people because their behavior doesn't change, especially with Mr. James Charles. And someone like Curtis, who is inherently one of the most unproblematic commentary YouTubers, he admits when he's wrong, admits his privilege, admits that when he cannot speak on a specific topic, that his best friend who he took on tour now is dragging Curtis down because of his past behavior. And the TikToker from the previous video that I made about Curtis is that she's not necessarily trying to cancel Curtis, but it really made me question accountability culture, and just really made me question like the motive behind that, especially when she was like, oh well, this was the most most likes I got on one video. I'm used to getting 50 likes, lol. Like, what does that have to do with anything if you're actually concerned someone doing blackface? And of course it's like a white girl. Like, I don't understand, I think that like this culture of accountability is also intertwined with like cancel culture, and this fits into the commentary bred YouTube community because a lot of these YouTubers speak with a sense of authority and their loyal followings take everything they say as truth. An example, Nick is not green. A lot of people believe that we hold people, celebrities, influencers, musicians accountable by deplatforming them in not only money capital but also social capital as well. Canceling someone involves heavily, in some instances, digging up tweets from someone's teens, early adults, and adding to whatever scandal they may currently be in. The reason we should hold them accountable, especially those who are James Charles and the likes, is to protect future victims or to prohibit future victims from happening. Everyone who have cases like Curtis Connor being a best friend of Dean, and just by association people are calling for Curtis to be cancelled, I think that's just kind of ridiculous to me. Or the case with Doja Cat and her boyfriend who had multiple allegations against him. There are a lot of people who like believe that Doja should be cancelled for blocking the victims who reached out to her as well as dating him, obviously. Both cases are association with relationships and people think that this is valid to cancel them. I feel like that accountability culture is greatly flawed. I think when it's like actual things like breaking the law, it should lead to being a platform, but besides that, accountability culture doesn't allow for forgiveness. It doesn't allow for growth like a normal person would have in everyday life. Like, I feel like normal people, learn from their mistakes, try not to repeat them, and continually grow as they age, as they get older. But because these YouTubers, influencers are who they are, people are constantly scrutinizing them because guess what? Their life is all over the internet. You see them in movies, you see them in interviews, in podcasts, on social media. So of course there's going to be a lot of differing opinions about them, and that's just kind of comes with the territory of being a celebrity and being in the spotlight. To be honest, people just love seeing people fall. Like, people love hating, like, period. Like, even my last Curtis Connor video, like I was saying, like, people are commenting, can't wait for him to be canceled, can't wait for people to leave the Curtis cult. Like, there are already so many people that are waiting for this specific person to fall, so they're ready to just cancel someone so quick. I think the situation from the Nick is not green super mega thing has really made people think about the fate of BreadTube as well. Personally, it seems like it's going to end up like the beauty guru YouTube kind of dramageddon that was going on. I've been saying this for like a while because I feel like that's kind of the route that it's going towards, just because of the amount of like, it's just like everyone in BreadTube like literally like works with each other, just like how the beauty guru people would always work for each other and they'd stab each other in the back and all this drama and blah 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 blah, to the point where it just got really overwhelming. Like, people are just like, it's not about makeup anymore. And I feel like BreadTube, it's not about having discourse anymore. It's not about having thoughts or open thoughts or thinking about things in a different perspective. It's not about also just like leftist ideology anymore. It's become more, I don't know, like very superficial, especially like with the Nick is not green kind of content that is going on, Jake Doolittle kind of content, Ethan is online kind of content. I feel like it's gotten more superficial and less about like debates or discourse or original like intentions of BreadTube. And I just think that literally every single person has been like it's gonna be like canceled like 10 times over, and it's gonna be like very exhausting. And I feel like we're gonna resort more to a longer video essayists, the streamers more. I feel like this commentary, a little kind of like meta journalism, it might die out soon, just in my opinion, if it keeps going the way that it is, especially with the super mega and having just like distrust with the YouTubers that we have gone super close to and have supported for a very long time. So I think that is inherently what is wrong with BreadTube and accountability culture. So let me know what you guys think in the comments, and make sure you like and subscribe. Go follow me on Instagram and TikTok, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye.
Not gonna lie, it took kinda rough. At least it could be honest for once. So he says he's had enough, but I'm like, why you got